topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in today. I'm Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to another episode of Winning Business TV and Radio. We're on W4CY.com. We're streaming live on Talk4 TV, in addition to on Facebook, and that's at Winning Business Radio. And, of course, we're available in podcast after the live show on many other platforms, including YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, pretty much wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. The mission of the show, Winning Business Radio and TV, as regular listeners know, viewers as well, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, to learn best practices, right? That's the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, and to be challenged and certainly and hopefully to be inspired by the successes of others. But, you know, virtually every successful person that I've ever had a chance to talk to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So like I say every week, while we all have to get our knees scraped once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. Today, my guest is Greg Hill, founder of marketing consultancy BrandBirth. Here's his bio. Greg Hill has earned a reputation as a transformational leader and entrepreneur with a unique ability to redefine and reinvigorate brands. His experience runs the gamut from senior level positions at multinational and advertising agencies to serving as a principal in several boutique agencies. In these roles, he's been fortunate to advise some of the world's leading brands, including Sony, Mattel, Microsoft, Virgin, Land Rover, Jaguar, and Oakley. He may be best known for opening lunch advertising, almost said launch, lunch advertising, where he managed the launch, there it is, a national rollout of Red Bull energy drink. Greg currently serves his clients through BrandBirth, a marketing consultancy dedicated to creating viable brand foundations for new and evolving brands. Through BrandBirth, Greg partners with dynamic entrepreneurial brands looking to define and execute on their brand promise and present their story to consumers in more innovative, empathetic, and unexpected ways. Over that time, Greg has also acted as in-house chief marketing officer for several of his clients, including Boz Spirits, where he supervised all aspects of the branding and launch of the first line of fruit-infused spirits, and Bear Humboldt, the legendary Humboldt County cannabis extraction and technology brand. Earlier, Greg was a senior vice president at Young and Rubicam Brands, where he was tasked with creating a new operating division responsible for developing and staging more innovative and non-traditional marketing efforts for a roster of multinational brands. Prior to Young and Rubicam, Greg was a partner at several nationally renowned creative agencies to manage the introduction of Red Bull to the North American market. As you heard, Greg opened the storied Lunch advertising agency. Under his leadership, Lunch established itself as a vital agency during an industry-wide recession, growing in 1 year to 50-plus employees spread over 4 offices with $100 million in billings. As a result, Greg was featured in a cover story in Adweek, and the agency itself was identified by Creativity magazine as one of the 10 hot new agencies in the U.S. Before Lunch, Greg served as the managing director of the M1 agency, best known for staging the broad-based consumer launch of Oakley sunglasses. He also served as agency foreman, I love this name, at G&M Plumbing, growing agency billings tenfold and developing award-winning work for clients including Del Taco, HBO Video, THQ Video Games, and Red Robin Restaurants. Greg graduated with highest departmental honors from Claremont McKenna College with a double major in literature and political science. Greg's wife of 25 years this August is Jamie. They have a 20-year-old daughter named Lulu, and they're dog parents to Franny, a golden retriever that's beloved by literally every person who's ever met. her, and I believe that. As Greg says, they're total dog people. At one point, they had 6. Greg, welcome to Winning Business Radio and TV. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's been a bit. Tell us about Jamie. Let's start with the good stuff.
Yeah, right. Jamie's awesome. Jamie is there's the Beach Boys song with the line, "God only knows what I'd be without you."
Yeah.
And that's essentially what I think of her, because
awesome.
whatever I am and whatever my failings are, she has put up with me, bless her heart, and sort of been right there in the middle of guiding and directing and leading my life. So, yep.
And Lulu, your daughter.
She's equally awesome in her own 20-year-old way. She's just couldn't be smarter and funnier. And yeah, she's up at school up in the Bay Area. And she has no idea what she wants to do. She loves working with kids. Kids love her. She's got something that they just think she's the coolest person in the world. And she loves art, and there may be something in that intersection for her. So,
cool.
But I'm in no hurry for her to figure it out. I keep trying to tell her, your 20s are the decade of not knowing, like the entire decade. So take advantage of that, and we'll go from there.
Well, when I grow up, I hope to make something out of myself.
Right.
So I'll keep you tuned. And of course, the star of the family is probably Franny. Tell us about Franny. She sounds
who's
fun.
actually asleep right here, but she sleeps well. So I know they say don't have a dog in the room. Yeah, she's 10 now, which is crazy, but
Wow.
she's the perfect golden retriever. She goes to what she understands to be the people park. Right, the dog. She just goes from person to person to person, and as I see, she's every dog owner's second favorite dog, because she knows exactly how to work the crowd, and they love her.
So I know you asked a question. We'll get to this. I won't explain. We'll explain in probably after the first break. But I'm an Isle, and I'm a dog person. That's the part I wanted to get to, a dog person. But everyone will know what we mean by aisle or window a little bit. But so let's get a little bit of background. Tell us where you grew up.
So I was born in Santa Cruz, but I was relatively young when we moved to Orange County, and that's really where I grew up. And I always viewed Orange County as a good place to grow up and a better place to leave. I was never moving back. I went to school at a small school outside of LA, and then really had the bulk of my career in Los Angeles. Then once we had our daughter, my wife had also grown up in a different part of Orange County. She really wanted to move back. I really didn't. And here we are, and we're back. And so we raised our daughter down here, and now she's out of the house. The question is, okay, where next?
Kind of how it works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I ended up in the city. I grew up in the suburbs of a town called Medfield, about 20-something miles southwest of Boston, but have been in Roslindale, a neighborhood in Boston, for a long time, many years, almost 40, because of my wife. I don't regret it. It's great, by the way. But so what made you choose Claremont McKenna? I always like to, and I don't know much about the school, I always like to just get a sense as to what people were thinking, and also what your early interests were.
Right. So Claremont, when I went there were 850 students there. There are 5 schools of the Claremont colleges together, and collectively, I think there are 4,000 students. So it's small, which I loved. I've always was super involved in school, and I wanted to go someplace where I could stay sort of at the heart of everything. But the thing that sealed it for me, I played water polo in high school, really competitive water polo, but I knew I didn't want to do D1 polo. It's your life.
Yeah.
And I loved it, but I was done with that level of commitment. But Claremont had the best sort of D3 program nationally. But the first time I went out there, I went out with a buddy, and the guy's walking us around campus. I remember his name was Mark Huff. His nickname was Muff. And every single person we walked by just said, "Hey, Muff, hey, Muff." Like everyone knew everyone. I thought this is where I want to be. I want to be in a place where I know everyone, and yet you have these other schools, so you can always go out and meet someone new. But I just loved the intimacy. It was a good college, it was a rigorous college, and it's such a different time, because it was the only school I applied to. I applied early admission. By November of my senior year, I was done with the whole
Same.
on the school thing, right? and it's such a different world now. I'm these poor kids.
Yeah. So why English and poli-sci?
Just straight up liberal arts, just thinking and ideas. I mean, that's really, and in retrospect, I would have traded out the poli-sci for history. There was a moment in time when I thought, oh, maybe I'll be in politics. So that was sort of naturally part of it. But it was really just a focus on ideas and communication. I always say to my daughter, if you can write and you can talk, you can do anything. And the people who understand what that thing is will work for you. And I believe that, like, the ability to communicate and express an idea is everything.
It's funny. I had a troika. Doesn't mean we don't need to explain that word, by the way, but I had a troika earlier today, and small network group meeting of 3 people for lunch. Okay, I guess I did explain the word. But the question was, why don't better people get into politics? And the answer was, would you?
So other people were spending a semester abroad or a year abroad.
Yeah.
I spent a semester in Washington, D.C., took classes at Georgetown and worked on Capitol Hill.
Yep.
And any thought I had about going into politics was dashed, while I was a junior in college, because I think still many people go in genuinely wanting to help, but the trade-offs are so immediately apparent, and the crushing of one's spirit, and it's depressing. And I think there are really good people. I think the real heroes are the sort of lifetime people who aren't elected, who are running, the day-to-day of government. Those are the people who are truly dedicated.
So when did you know you wanted to get into advertising / marketing?
So second semester, senior year, I looked up and sort of realized that I had to get a job. And I hadn't, and I sort of.
So let me give you the follow-up is, how'd you get the first job? So I might as well throw that out there too. Go ahead.
So we'll do this. Right. So I was like, I have to work. And I spent a lot of time, again, going back to being a small school, I spent a lot of time throwing parties. There was actually a budget for throwing parties, and I would do themes for the parties and flyers and promotions. It was just fun for me. And I'm at one of these parties I've thrown, and I'm talking to this cute young woman, and she says, "You should go into advertising." And I said, "You're right. I should go into advertising." And literally, there was something about it that appealed to me. It was very broad.
Yeah.
And so you do the thing. You send out the resumes. You meet the people. Each person introduces you. You go through that whole thing, and then at the same time, 4 doors down from me was the son of the chairman of Gray Advertising. He's like, "You need to meet my dad." Went in. We hit it off. He believed in the school, so I sort of had a leg up.
Mm-hmm.
This was also back when people had training programs. Like they invested in people just to train them. At that point in time, their training program had only ever been MBAs. I was the first person to get in with just an undergraduate degree, but it was such a fantastic opportunity, and that was really the jumping off point for it.
Cool. All right, this is a question that might cause you to think, and this will be the question that'll probably take us into our first break.
Okay.
From that experience of getting that first job, Gray Advertising, you were there for a good chunk of time, 6 years. That's significant for a first job, I think. I know times were different then than they are now, and I know that makes us sound old. Oh, well. But what was your key lesson learned from that experience?
My key lesson learned from that experience is it was a great training in 100 different ways, but I am not someone who can work in a corporate environment. I am not someone who can go and be one of a really big group of people working every day and doing the same thing every day, which really teed up. Well, first of all, when I left Gray, and I'd been in a relationship since college, they both end to end, I left the country for a year. I packed a backpack, I cashed out. Fortunately, Gray was very fiscally conservative, so there was essentially retirement money, but I literally, I left to leave Gray. And then when I came back, it was much more a focus on what can I do, what can I create? And part of that was that second phase of my career where I started opening my own agencies. Mm-hmm. But that was really the take. I mean, great training, how to write, how to think, how to communicate, all those things. But really, okay, I can't work I can't go into an office every day for these hours and do this thing. It ain't me, and I'm not good at it.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. All right, we're going to take our first break. It's just about a minute. We'll be right back with Greg Hill.
Excellent.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamt of being on the radio? Well, now is your chance. Be a radio show guest on the #1 ranked internet radio station and promote you and your business for free. Yes, you heard it, free. Business advertising right here on W4CY.com. Call 561-506-4031 now to get booked on one of our shows. That's 561-506-4031. Get your free advertising now.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Greg Hill. He's the founder of marketing consultancy Brand Birth. We're going to talk more about that in a bit. And so I don't want to go through every work experience, but can you share some key lessons learned, either from a campaign or from a mentor or a boss or a particular role? I know you were at M1 after that was like second job or somewhere in there early, but can you reflect on some of that? And I know it's a while ago, but do your best.
Well, I think there were two, I'd love to call them mentors, but that might be a little presumptuous. But the founder of Oakley, Jim Gennard, and the founder of Red Bull, Dietrich Mateschitz, both of them had this insight and this understanding of the difference between branding and marketing, of the idea of more empathetic connections, of the idea of how you identify the people you care about the most, and not how to sell to them, but how to help them. And between them, those two were so sort of formative in my understanding of what I do now. And this idea of how you remove yourself from the utilitarian sense of what will it cost to get someone to do the thing I want them to do, as opposed to who do I care about? How can I help them? And how do they, how do I invite them in to be a part of my club on their own terms? And so those two were really sort of the foundational, I think, influence for me.
So I got to ask, did you come up with the wings idea?
No, so the wings is actually the original. It's German, and it's a much more elegant statement in German. It flows a little bit.
They spell it wrong, by the way. No, just kidding.
What?
I'm teasing. They spell it wrong.
Yeah.
There's multiple eyes. I forget how many eyes there are, but
yeah. But the way that job happened was Red Bull. What they did in every and they were already in a dozen countries by the time they came to U.S. And what they did in every country is they would just sort of hire a local agency to translate or transliterate the work that was created in Germany. It was just function here, do this. To their credit, they realized that the U.S. really couldn't be handled that way, that it needed to be something genuine and authentic and reflect, this culture. And so instead of hiring an agency, we actually built an agency from scratch around Red Bull as the first client, and then built it out from there. But that allowed us to sort of take the culture to be immediately integrated into, and I'm talking when we started, there was, 28 people at Red Bull in one test market. Like it was, and people just thought I was insane to leave my, cool Oakley agency to do
for a risky account like Red Bull.
Yeah. Well, there's no such thing. Yeah. There's no such thing as an energy drink. You can't just make up a category. No one will ever spend $2 on 8 ounces of yellow sugar water. You're throwing your career away. But as I say, Dietrich Mateschitz had such a vision. He's far and away, he's just passed last year, which is sad, but not just the wealthiest person I've ever worked with directly from his work, but the one most deserving of every dollar. He understood exactly what he was doing there. And so the job was to take what they'd done and reframe it for the American market and make, because it is a brand all about personal connection.
So what was the biggest challenge of starting Lunch? And then part of that answer as well is, how'd you land Red Bull?
Well, so the biggest challenge of starting Lunch was bringing other people in who could understand the vision when it was a complete unknown, right? Bringing a creative partner in, bringing in people to then ultimately, in addition, our core office was in Santa Monica, but opened offices in Chicago and Tribeca and Miami, and people to run those. And it was a very unique kind of person who could look through all the doubt and go, oh, this is something important. This is something that is, groundbreaking. And the way I was brought into it, the head of the guy who owned the office in, technically in Frankfurt, but Red Bull's an Austrian company, and he'd been longtime friends with Dietrich, with the owner of Red Bull. And Red Bull has been owned by a guy. It is a privately held company. Wow. It remains a privately held company.
I didn't know that either.
And he's the one that found me when they'd made the decision, we need to build an agency from scratch. And he was a writer, and he kept meeting creatives, and he realized really quickly, oh, I need someone who can actually run a business. Yeah. And then we'll worry about the creatives. And so someone connected him to me, and the rest was history.
Well, I do want to ask about G&M Plumbing.
Yeah, it's a great name, right?
It's a great name.
Foreman. And there were two founders were gentlemen whose initials were G&M, and I laughed because I came in as they were both creatives, and they brought me in as sort of the managing partner, the doing all of that piece of it. And I said, yeah, they could only hire someone whose first name started with a G or an M. So it was a very limited, window of applicants there. But just, the name reflects the culture, a really fun agency, a really interesting model because it was both the creative and the production house together. And so it worked. There was never sort of going outside of the room. And so a lot of TV production, a lot of great ideas. But yeah, just you get a sense of the culture from there. And then that was my role, is to come in and, I mean, they were very real. I'm not going to say make them real, but get them to that next level of growth and stability and normalcy.
Hey, I will toss out a fun fact for you. The Boston-based audiences, the viewers and listeners know, but there's a longtime morning radio host in Boston named Greg Hill.
There was a Kansas City Chief. There was a motocross. It is a weirdly common name. For Greg being a name, I like Greg because everyone knows the name, but it's not that common. But Greg Hill, there are a bunch of Greg Hills out there. So yes.
So being a Red Sox fan, we were watching the 2004 playoff series, during which the Red Sox finally won. But I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if you watched baseball at the time, but Pedro Martinez, fiery guy. Well, Don Zimmer from the Yankees comes charging. I forget what had happened, something at the plate, threw a ball, whatever. But Don Zimmer starts to charge Pedro, and Pedro kind of knocks him down like an ole, like a bull. And the announcer says, where's Kevin Hallinan? And my mother called and a couple other people called. That was the then head of security for Major League Baseball.
Nice.
So never met the guy, but same name.
I'm getting a name check on the World Series.
That's it. All right. So I'll mention a couple of companies. You tell us maybe which one strikes you as where you learned the most or had something impactful. Young and Rubicon, of course. Box Spirits. I don't know how you pronounce. Is it Halbreis?
Yeah. So let's talk. We can talk about Y&R because that was an interesting. That was sort of a foray. What happened was, I just sold my stake in my last agency up in LA when we were moving back down to Orange County with a kid and all. And I didn't want to move down. And I thought I was being clever by saying, okay, listen, if I can find a job, because I wasn't going to start something from scratch right then. If I can find a job, we'll move. So it was sort of anti-interviewing because I didn't want to move back down here. And what happened is I met.
You were betting against yourself and throwing the game. So that's what you're doing.
Exactly. And it didn't work. I still lost. I met the chairman of Y&R, and at that point in time, it's this agency in Orange County whose roster is Sony, is Land Rover, is Jaguar, is Microsoft. Is like this astonishing blue chip roster for this, concrete tilt up in an anonymous business park.
Funny.
But this was going back to, sort of Web 2.0, and they were still completely reliant on TV. It was all TV. It was all Creative Spot. And I as part of my anti-interview, and he was a great guy, David Murphy, the CEO of Y&R at the time. I said, look, what are you doing here? Like everything is a TV spot, and you come up with a spot, you sell it, and then you do everything. You've got to go the other way. Stop relying on TV. Start thinking about how to make these genuine connections, even with brands that size. There's an opportunity for this to be something else. He's like, fine, you do it. It's like, no, someone else. No, I'm just saying. So I ended up opening a division called Groundswell, which is a name I really liked that I came up with. But the idea was, how do we shift dollars away from just this knee-jerk sell a TV spot and then build stuff around it, to find these ways to engage even on these big global brands in more genuine ways, find ways to do long form, find ways to do events, find ways to do all these different things, and shift away from just we make TV and then we spin stuff out of it. And that was a great experience.
That's a good one right there. Let's see. Bear Humboldt. That's an interesting one to me.
Yeah. So as a rule, I try not to work in any industry on a repeat basis. I'm a huge believer in what I call the genius of stupidity. Like there are experts.
I read that blog. Yeah.
Experts get hired to tell you everything, and that is not my job. My job is the opposite. My job is to come in and ingest as much information as possible and sort of derive meaning out of it. The only industry that I work in pretty consistently is cannabis, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that for a brand guy, it's so fun. I mean, it's pure commodity, right? It's dirt, water, a seed, and your story, right? And so it's fantastic in that way. Also, at this point in time, people working in the industry are really cool people. They're in it for the right reasons. They want to see things happen responsibly but move forward, and so it works there. So Bear was a really fun assignment, and sort of sad in the sense that Humboldt has really gotten hurt weirdly by legalization. If anyone knows anything about the California cannabis market, it's struggling. And you have all of these farmers up there, second generation farmers with all the institutional knowledge. They do grow the highest quality cannabis that's grown really anywhere on the planet. And they needed help. And Bear was doing a really good job of trying to defend the local farmers, of working with them, of partnering them, and trying to just keep them alive and get them through the sort of the hard times. So it was a great opportunity there. It was great to be up because it's Mecca as cannabis goes, right? Mm-hmm. It's everything you want to understand about the culture, about the people who founded it. It's really interesting. The reason Humboldt is Humboldt isn't because people went there to grow weed. It was really all the back to the land in the late 60s, people leaving society and people not happy with what was happening everywhere else. And they all moved there because it was off the grid, and then sort of accidentally discovered that it is the perfect environment, the perfect sort of, it's the weather, it's the breeze,
you don't need a greenhouse.
Water. And sort of accidentally we're like, oh, this is what happens here.
That's cool. All right. So through all these, I mean, you founded Brand Birth in 2006, and you've obviously had other projects, both in-house, outsourced, not projects, relationships and campaigns, et cetera. Right. What was behind this? This question will take us to the next break. The founding of Brand Birth.
Trying to not do anything anymore. So I, my career has gotten, but I've been getting smaller and smaller and smaller by design. I was at big agencies and I had my own agencies, and there were a couple of things about Brand Birth. And the first was, once I'd sold my last agency and was done with that, I had this really long list of what I didn't want to do anymore, right? Employees, leases, all that stuff. Yeah. And this really short list, which was creators, owners, entrepreneurs. These people need help. They need protection. They know what they know. They know why they started their business, but they have no idea how to really tell their story. And that was sort of the jumping off point for what I have now. And over time, it really is just focusing on this one single element, which is the thing before everything else. Why do you exist? And why does anyone care on their own terms?
All right. I like that. Good answer. We're at the bottom, almost the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a break right here, about another minute. We'll be right back with Greg Hill.
Excellent.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
The YP.com website is your local search engine. If you're looking for a good restaurant, it can help you find the right one nearby with ratings and reviews. Or if your car breaks down, you can use the YP app to find the closest repair shop. Or maybe you're just looking for something to do on a Friday night. Well, it has great local coupons for all sorts of things in your area. No matter what, when, or where, if you're looking for something, YP Local Search can help you find it. So go to YP.com or download the app to search local, find local, and save local.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Greg Hill, founder of marketing consultancy Brand Birth. And let's see. Okay. So now I want to dig into the work that you're doing now, today, for whom, et cetera. So first of all, you raised a question on your website. I thought it was a great question. What is brand?
Yeah. And that's the question. And I think one of the challenges when I'm working with a client, one of the things we always talk about is who is your enemy? And your enemy is not the competition. Your enemy is some perception, some idea, some whatever. Brand Birth's enemy is the many and varied uses of the word brand, right? It's used to cover a multitude of sins out in the world. And that's really where I get on my little soapbox is the idea of design isn't brand, colors and brand, logos and brand. When I'm working on a brand, I always warn a client, I always say brand is agnostic. There is no design at all attached when we're working on a brand strategy. It is Arial on white, as I tell them. If I can't get you all sort of goosebumpy just with words on a page, then yeah, I think David Byrne had a quote I loved. He said, Talking Heads, David Byrne, he said, words are a trick to get you to listen to music for longer than you otherwise would. And design is a trick to get you to feel something that you otherwise wouldn't feel. And so I always want to sort of move that aside. So brand, the simplest answer is brand is a promise, but brand is a culture. Brand is the idea of understanding why you're here, why you exist, and why people want to be a part of you. And that may be working for you, that may be inviting them in on their own terms. But I think the idea is you can't chase people. You plant your flag. You're able to say in the clearest, simplest terms, this is what I believe in, this is what we do, this is why we're here. And if you're with us, join us. And in doing that, that's when you have the opportunity for people to take up your flag and become your sort of evangelist. Because the other thing about brand is that any great brand is polarizing, right? You have to have enemies to have friends. I always say everyone's fine with vanilla, but no one will walk across the street for it. But there's a flavor of ice cream that you love and I hate, and you'll walk 10 blocks together. Yeah. I'll walk 10 blocks next to you to tell you how awful it is.
That's exactly right.
Only sort of bolsters your passion for it. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for something that isn't broad and applicable to everyone. You're looking for something that what Jim Gennard, the founder of Oakley, always called the first 5 rows. There's people right here in front of you. Those are the only ones you care about, and everyone else will figure it out from there.
Yeah, I noticed you use 2 words: connection and emotion.
Yeah. I think the two go hand in hand, and brand should be. I'm very proud of the fact that every single client I've worked with, and these are owners, right? These are their babies. That's what they all have in common. It's all different industries, it's all different sizes, but they own this not just financially but emotionally. And I want to get them at least welling up at one point during the process with all of them, because they're finally seeing their belief system, what they've always wanted to say, but it hasn't connected in a way that now everyone's going to feel what they feel about it. And that's the key.
That's really good. All right. For the audiences, we have viewers, we have listeners. Can you differentiate branding from marketing?
Yes, I can. And I think it's a really important differentiation. I think that brand is the process of understanding who you care about, what they need, and how you can help. Marketing collectively is a process of getting someone to do what you want them to do at the lowest possible cost. Mm-hmm. Now that's marketing, right? That's a key thing, and everyone needs to do it. But if you do the marketing without having done the branding first, it's so self-interested and so forced and so sort of jaded or contrived in a way, right? You really turn people off because they see that all you're doing is like, hey, can I, for $1.90, will you buy my thing?
Yeah.
Right. And
I've got a spam folder, junk folder full of those right now. So
yeah. And so and the idea is it's not an either or, right? Marketing's marketing. Marketing is absolutely the journey, but brand is the map. You know what I mean? And you can go on the journey without a map, and you may eventually get there and it'll be long and painful, or you can spend the time to know where you are, where you're going, and get there really efficiently.
So I've interviewed a lot of authors, and I ask about inspiration. Where do your ideas come from? And I know that's probably not an easy question to answer. Where does that inspiration and idea come from?
Because
my brain doesn't work that way, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, well, it's a hard thing. So a huge part of my process is I really, really believe in qualitative research. I've had clients where I do 60 or 70 hours of one-on-one interviews, and that's the C-suite, first, or the leadership team, or they want to call it, and that's the second circle of employees. And I like to start with the C-suite because they're going to tell you what you already sort of know, but they talk first, and so you get that out of the way. But it gives you a frame, because when you talk to the employees, and like I want to talk to employees, like, well, here are my 10 best employees. I'm like, thanks, that's not the list I want. I want the one who quit and has come back. I want the one who hears I have a very specific list, and they start to understand. But when you talk to the employees, they're like, oh yeah, they said this, right? So let me tell you. And part of the deal is that everything is absolutely confidential. I will use specific verbatims when I'm trying to express a point, but I won't ever attribute them. And then the third circle is clients. And it's the same way. They're like, well, here's my best clients. Like, thanks. We're the ones who fired you and you don't know why. We're the ones who've never hired you, even though you've pitched them 3 times. And they're always a little reticent, but those people are never malicious.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy to help. One of the things I found that's really interesting is when you talk to people who have fired a client, invariably they don't really tell the client why, because they don't want to have the argument at that point.
They're afraid to be closed, all that. Yeah.
Right. And so, but they get some benign answer, oh, it's out of our control. But
usually it's accompanied by at this time.
Yeah, right. But they'll tell me honestly, simply, friendly, and so that works out in that way. So once I have all the one-on-one interviews, and I sort of have gotten good at this thing where I can have the conversation separately, be kind of typing the transcript, as it were. The absolutely unscientific part of the job is then I have this stack of transcripts. I walk on the beach. I have a recorder. I talk to myself, and I just start unraveling. I just start making connections. I look at 5 people who said the same thing in 5 different ways. There's a rabbit hole there to go down. Cool. And it's as unscientific as it is. The best analogy I've always had is it's that string, that tangle of Christmas lights, and you just keep tugging at it. And at one point, it's like, oh, there you are. There, it got it now. And so that is the most unscientific part, which is also why I can't really scale. I can't have. I've got to, when we go to the second half, which is the agency part of the business, right, all the resources. But for the brand part, it is me and one person who sort of runs my life, because I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm bad at. And I'm bad at running my life.
That's really good.
But it really is just that's the part I think that's hard to explain or hard to quantify.
So you've mentioned unscientific. I get that, and I know about how, I don't know how, but I know you measure results after the fact. Do you know sometimes that you have a home run before you're able to measure? Because I'm sure you measure.
Oh yeah. No, there are some that are so. I hit a moment and I hit an idea, and it's like, yeah, that's it, and that tends to happen. Knock on wood, that's the goal every single time out, is because I just keep sort of digging at it until until it's there, until I've sort of found that thing. And with the clients, with their reaction, right? They're like, oh, and that's the real fun of it. I bet is an owner showing an owner a way to talk about a thing that they created in ways they've never understood, and they've been frustrated. Like I can't get this across. Why can't I communicate this? And so that's the joy of it. I mean, that's the part that I love so much. I'm very, very, very lucky to do what I do. I love what I do so much, and so it keeps me going.
It shows in the way you're answering these questions. What are some of the more subtle problems that you help clients solve?
There's always culture. There's always disconnects with their team, with their management style. And one of the things we warn them is sort of after doing all the one-on-ones and doing my own sort of brainstorming and putting this together, the first really big meeting, what I sort of benignly call a brand workshop, is at least a half day. And it's not about brand. It's about, let me tell you the story of what's going on in your own company. Let me show you why and connect the dots and sort of have this linear narrative from beginning to end. And invariably in that, there are some sensitive or touchy, there are things that you sort of got to put out there. But I've also found that's how I earn their trust. All of my business, all of it is inbound referral. I've realized over time, I can't do any cold outbound. I can't convince someone they need a new brand, no matter how empirically wrong their brand may be at the point in time, if they don't already have some doubt about it. So I have some level of trust, but it's borrowed. It is because someone said to them, you need to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
Moving forward from the brand workshop of that, now I've earned the trust. Now they're open to everything we're going to do after that. And that's really when we start creating all the moving pieces of the brand.
All right. So this is the obligatory question, and you have a unique way of answering this. And I tend to agree with your answer, by the way. How would you describe your ideal client?
So one of the things is that all of the traditional, it's this size, it's this industry, none of that matters. My ideal client is an owner, someone who has that passion and is building that business, who realizes that for whatever reasons, their vision isn't being communicated inside and outside the company, and they're open to the fact that we're going to radically reinvent their understanding of themselves in a way that, even though it appears like a radical reinvention out here, they still see the essence of who they are and what they do in it, right? So I'm not freaking them out. I'm not like, yeah, we'll change your business model, but they have to be open. They have to be willing to embrace change in a foundational way, and they need to be able to realize that brand isn't a sales and marketing tool. It is a veneer over everything, inside and outside, right? It is the absolute sort of surface of every interaction, every engagement, team to team, internal to external, every single way.
And are your clients like ours, and like most these days, geography doesn't matter a whole lot? Domestic versus international, big versus small, really doesn't matter.
No. It is really important. I mean, obviously, since the world ended and came back to life, and we've sort of been out there, there's been more and more people being more comfortable virtually. I'm always going to be face to face, at least for a period of time at the beginning. I'll spend a week sitting in offices. It's an excuse to do all the one-on-ones and things, but it's really just about absorbing a culture. It's just about sitting in a cube in the middle of everything and hearing how they talk, seeing what the vibe and the energy level is, and all those pieces of it. Because otherwise it's sort of an academic exercise, right? And so it has to go beyond that.
Well, I noticed one example you wrote about where there was, call it a 13-week engagement. Your comment was you're going to spend 6 weeks-ish understanding, right? Learning, developing that information, all that information, the culture, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, if you sort of distill it down, there's two halves to the work. There's, in the simplest terms, there's ingestion and then expression. There's all the learning, all the bringing it in, and just getting my head around it, and then sort of distilling it down into this pure, perfect, crystalline essence, and then building it back up over the expression, and then creating the language that reflects that. And so the second half is really fun too, because that's when it starts to take shape. It's all very amorphous in the beginning, like what am I doing, what am I talking about? It's all big and broad. And then when you start feeling purpose, which is always the first thing, why do you exist over and above what you do, which is first to say, how are you not a commodity? But more than that, what's your legacy? What are you doing? What are you leaving, right? And if you start with that, it's so 30,000 feet that you invite them in to dream and imagine in that larger way.
Now, are most engagements of finite length, or are they ongoing?
Yeah. So the brand project is a finite length, and that's what it is a project. It's a fixed fee project. I can tell them every single week what's going to happen over the period of it. Then what happens is, once we're done with this, Arial on white with the brand on the page, then we sort of go the other way. I'll spend 6 months at least with every client launching their business. Sometimes we take it down to the studs, right? There is new name, there's new visual identity. A lot of times there's new logo, because they realize it's tired. There's always new website. There's always new salesman, right? There's all the outbound expressions of it are different. But then some clients just sort of never leave. And I've realized that even though, going back to my long list of what I didn't want anymore, the value of that for me is that I can continue to watch the brand as it sort of comes to life out in the world. And that's what the clients really just want to know, is that I have my eye on it, even though I brought in these teams and built these teams to actually execute on it. They just need to know that I'm still that first call.
That's really good. All right. Now, this is just fun for me. Okay. This next one. I'm an aisle. So explain that.
Okay. I have a belief system. Yeah. And that is, and one of the things I'll always ask clients is window or aisle. Window is vision, aisle is function. And it's insight to me into a client of which way they answer. And then you get the clients who are like, well, I have my own plane. You're like, you don't have. Imagine going back to when you weren't this. So, and that helps me understand early on, because again, those are questions, especially with founders, with owners, that there's a set of questions like that I like to talk about. But if someone is a window, that is someone who is thinking, looking, who is open and outbound. If someone is an aisle, that is because they are working their function, they're head down, they're doing their thing, and they view a plane specifically as an opportunity to shut out the world and get stuff done, as opposed to viewing a plane specifically as a time to think and imagine and look at a horizon.
That's good. I loved it. I had fun with that myself. All right, you're a member of board of directors of Pure Game. Tell people what Pure Game is.
Super cool. So Pure Game is a charitable organization here in Orange County, based on soccer. But what they do is they use sport to bring underprivileged kids sort of out after school, to give them a safe place to be, to give them a community. A lot of kids still who don't have parents at home at the end of the day. And so we set up programs, we have training, we have coaches, we're out on the fields, we're out with the kids, in these areas. And it just is a way of, first of all, keeping them safe, but also using sport as a way to teach, confidence, self-respect, teamwork, all the things that we know that team sports do. And to do it, at a relatively early age. These are elementary school kids, right?
Oh, cool.
Maybe through 7th grade. And so it's wonderful in that way. And it's one of those things that I like knowing what I made. But when I had my agency, it was, and I've talked to people about it. This may be a random allusion, but way back there was the X-Files, and the vanity plate at the end of it was this sprockety sound, a little kid voice saying, "I made this," and I always loved that. Like, and you can picture, like, I made this, right? And that idea of, and I would talk to when I was interviewing, like, this is the expectation at the end of the day. Like, I want to know what you made. Like, what did you actually do today?
That's cool.
Because people can spend a whole lifetime in advertising and not do anything but move paper across the desk. And so I think it's important that you're looking for creators at every level. And so going back to the kids, that's a huge piece of it is, what are you doing? What are you making? How are you building? How are you building a team? So it's fun.
That is cool. All right. Big question. You may have already answered it without me knowing, but in your professional life, what are you most proud of?
Boy, that's a good
that's
question.
a hard one.
I'm sorry. What?
I just said, that's a hard question. Yeah. Probably to narrow down, right?
There's always going to be a thing about Red Bull. There's always going to be a thing about, like, even now when I look and it shows up in the culture, and it's far beyond me at this point in time. But I'm incredibly proud of having been there and having built that agency, to work with them day one, because I think there was foundationally we got them off on the right track. But beyond that, it's the thing I'm working on now is as much of a easy out answer that may be. It's really is just in the moment, the thing that's happening right now. I'm doing a project right now with a set of what they call federally qualified health centers, serving deeply underserved East Los Angeles. And we had about 3.5 months they lost their funding partner, they lost their name. And over the course of the last 4 months of last year, a rebrand, a new name, and a complete relaunch. And watching the teams in the centers, the pride that they have over their new name and their engagement. And that's a big thing. Like, it's always more about employees than clients or customers for me.
Absolutely.
Like, those are the people that and I do think of what I do in the perfect world as being an inflection point in the lives of these companies. And so I'm just generally very proud of that work.
That's awesome. All right. We are about to wrap up. What is the best way for people to reach out? We've put your Brand Birth URL in the crawl. We put your email address in the crawl. If somebody wants to reach out, is that the best way?
Yeah. The email is always going to be 24/7. I'm going to see that before anything else. If you're curious, you can go on the website, which is brand-birth.com, and you can see what that is. But yeah, and I always tell people, like, this sounds more self-serving than it is, but reach out. I love having these conversations. I'll spend an hour talking to anyone about their business, not pitching them, but it's just, if I can give them some things to think about, it's a little direction forward. That for me is time really well spent. It's a lot. It's nice not to be a lawyer and have to account for every hour, right? I can just spend an hour and hang out and talk to someone about their business, and I love it.
Love it. Hey, thank you, Greg, for being here. I know you're really busy. I appreciate you taking the time out.
Oh, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much, Kevin. And thanks, anyone who's still listening, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you all, to your point, for everyone for watching and listening. This is a show about business and business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Winning Business Radio, or you can drop me a note. One of my many email addresses I always say is kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Our company is Winning Incorporated, part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. We're not right for everybody, but hey, maybe we should have a conversation. Thank you to our producer and engineer, Juan, for another job well done. Thank you, Juan. Be sure to join us next week, Monday, May 20th, when my guest will be Harrison Ryder of Sales Acceleration. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.